The turkey had been in the smoker since 5 in the morning. I'd been up since 4:30, same as every Christmas since Linda passed. I'd made the cranberry sauce. I'd polished the good glasses. I had sawdust on my boots from checking the smoker at dawn, and I was still wearing my flannel shirt when my daughter-in-law walked into my kitchen, looked me over like I was some kind of inconvenience, and said, "Calm as you please, Carl. Maybe you'd be more comfortable watching the game in your room tonight." My room? In my house. The house I bought in 1991. The house I spent 2 summers renovating with my own 2 hands. I'm Carl Merritt. I'm 67 years old. And that was the moment I finally understood what had been happening for the past 9 months. Let me back up, because this story didn't start at Christmas. It started on a Tuesday in March, when my son Brian called me from the parking lot of his apartment building and asked if he and his wife could stay with me for a little while. Brian is 38. He's an electrician, good at his job, steady, reliable. He's got his mother's patience, which is saying something because Linda had more patience than anyone I've ever known. She passed 6 years ago. Cancer. We had 4 months from diagnosis to the end. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that part except to say those 4 months were the longest and the shortest of my life, sometimes in the same afternoon. After Linda died, I stayed in our house in Ohio. And the one we bought in 1991 when Brian was 4. I redid the kitchen floors twice, rebuilt the back porch from scratch, fixed the furnace more times than I can count. Every wall in that place has my fingerprints on it, literally. My neighbor Neil figured I'd downsize. My sister Paula thought I'd move closer to her in Cleveland. I said no to both. I wasn't ready to leave. I'm still not sure I ever will be. So when Brian called that Tuesday in March and told me things had gotten rough, his electrical contracting company folded without warning, and his wife Sasha had just left her marketing job to start her own online consulting business that was still finding its footing. I said yes before he finished his sentence. Just until we stabilize, Dad. Maybe 3 or 4 months. We'll help around the house. It won't be a burden, I promise. I believed him. He's my son. I want to be fair about Sasha, because I think that still matters even when it's hard. When Brian first brought her around, I liked her. She was sharp, direct. She said what she thought without dancing around it, and I respected that. When Brian told me he was going to propose, I was genuinely happy for him. I danced at their wedding. Badly, but genuinely. But I've learned in 67 years that people can be one thing in one situation and something different when circumstances shift. They moved in on a Saturday in late March with a rented van, 2 cats, and more boxes than I expected. I cleared out the large guest room, put fresh towels out, left the window cracked because I remembered Sasha liked fresh air. I wanted them to feel welcome. I wanted this to be what it was supposed to be. Family, helping family. The first few weeks were fine. Brian and I would have coffee in the mornings before Sasha came down. That reminded me of when he was a teenager, and we'd have slow Saturday mornings before the day got going. Sasha would set up her laptop at the dining room table and work through the afternoon. It was manageable. I thought, this is going to be okay. The first thing that changed was small enough that I almost didn't register it. I came out to the garage one morning in early May and found my tool cabinet reorganized. I know that sounds like nothing, but I've had that cabinet set up the same way for 20 years. Everything has a place I know without looking. Chisels here, drill bits there, hand planes on the second shelf where I can reach them without thinking. Someone had rearranged the whole thing. Grouped by size, color-coordinated handles together, aesthetically neat, completely useless for how I actually work. I didn't say anything. I put everything back the way it was. 2 weeks later, I noticed that the old hand plane Howard gave me, Howard's my closest friend, we did a lot of woodworking together before his back gave out, was gone from its hook on the garage wall. I found it in a plastic storage bin under the workbench, wrapped in a towel, like something you shove away when company's coming. I went upstairs and knocked on their bedroom door. Brian answered. I said, "Howard's plane lives on the wall in the garage. It means something to me. Please put it back." He looked uncomfortable. Sasha thought the garage looked a little cluttered. She's been trying to organize things. I want you to notice the word he used. Organize. Like a tool hung on its proper hook is disorganized. "Brian," I said, keeping my voice even, "I appreciate that she wants to feel comfortable here, but that's my garage, and that plane stays on the wall." He nodded. Said he would. The plane sat in that bin for 5 more days before it quietly reappeared on its hook. I didn't make a scene. I told myself we'd find a rhythm. It takes time. There was no rhythm. Only escalation. By June, Sasha had cleared off my workbench and set up her laptop and 2 monitors on it. My woodworking tools were stacked in bins on the floor. My grandfather's old vise, the one my dad gave me when I turned 25, had been pushed into the corner to make room for an ergonomic office chair she'd ordered online. I asked her about it directly. She said the dining table wasn't big enough for her dual monitor setup, and the garage had good light. She was pleasant about the whole thing. "I use that bench," I said. "That's my workspace." "Of course," she said, smiling. "Whatever you need." The monitors stayed for 6 weeks. In July, she asked, and I'll give her credit, she did ask this time, if she could convert the garage into a proper home office, put in a real desk, add shelving, set it up long-term. "No," I said. First time I'd said it that directly. "The garage is mine. It's not available as an office." "Totally understand," she said. No problem at all." 3 days later, her monitors were back on my workbench. My tools were on the floor again. I went to Brian. He looked tired. The specific kind of tired that comes from standing between 2 people you care about and not knowing how to stop doing it. "She's under a lot of pressure with the business," he said. "It's just temporary." I said, "No, Brian, we talked about this." "I know, Dad. I'll talk to her." He talked to her. She apologized. But the monitor stayed for 6 more weeks after that apology. I want to explain something here because I think it's the part that's hardest to understand from the outside. It doesn't happen all at once. If someone moved into your house and on day 1 started taking over your workspace, you'd react immediately. Anyone would. But that's not how this works. It happens one small move at a time. Each individual thing seems like it might not be worth making into a whole problem. You don't want to be the difficult one. You don't want every dinner to feel like a standoff. So you let the small things go. Then the next small thing. And before you know it, you're standing in your own garage feeling like a visitor who got there early. By August, it wasn't just the garage anymore. Sasha bought a new kitchen rug without asking me. She replaced the hand soap in the downstairs bathroom with a ceramic set she preferred. The kind that's hard to refill and looks like it belongs in a hotel. She rearranged the pantry so that everything I used regularly ended up on the high shelves I had to stretch to reach. Small things. Each one small on its own. Then one afternoon, I came home from the lumber yard and found her out front talking to Neil, my neighbor of 14 years, about the oak tree on the property line. Whether it should be trimmed, whether it was dropping too many leaves in the fall. I stood by my truck for a moment, just watching. She was pointing at different branches and talking about angles and clearance, gesturing like she owned the place. Neil saw me first. He gave me a look. Not unkind, just the look you give someone when you're not quite sure what's going on. I walked over, shook his hand, and told him we'd talk about the tree if I decided to do anything with it. Sasha smiled. "I was just getting some information," she said. That was August. In September, 6 months into what was supposed to be a 3 or 4 month stay, Brian picked up a new contract. Money was coming in again. There was no mention of apartment hunting, no mention of timelines, no mention of the arrangement we had agreed to back in March. I let that go too, for a while. Told myself they were still getting stabilized. Told myself it would come up on its own. It didn't come up on its own because I wasn't making it come up. That September, Brian and Sasha had a fight. I wasn't trying to overhear. Their room is upstairs and I was in the kitchen. But voices carry in an old house. I couldn't make out the words, just the shape of it. Two people who had been holding something in for a long time finally letting some of it out. It went on for about 20 minutes, and then went quiet. Neither of them mentioned it the next morning. Neither did I. But I lay awake that night thinking, and by about 2 in the morning I had worked something out. But the problem wasn't just the garage. The problem wasn't just the kitchen rug, or the oak tree, or the monitors on my bench. My house had become the thing they were focused on instead of whatever was actually going on between the two of them. My stuff to rearrange, my space to manage, it gave them something external to deal with instead of the internal thing they were avoiding. I couldn't fix that. It wasn't mine to fix. But I could stop letting my home be the place they used to avoid it. I went out to the garage that night around midnight. While I sat down in the chair I built the winter Linda was in the hospital. Oak and walnut, good clean joinery. One of the projects that kept my hands busy when I didn't know what else to do with myself. I picked up my dad's old toolbox. Didn't open it. Just held it for a while and sat in the quiet. I had been saying, I'd prefer, and if you don't mind, and when you get a chance. Those aren't limits. Those are wishes. And wishes, I had learned, are easy for people to set aside when it's convenient for them to do so. I sat out there until past midnight. Then I went inside, and in the morning I knew exactly what I needed to say. In October, I sat both of them down at the kitchen table. Linda and I bought that table at an estate sale in 1994. Dark walnut, solid as the day it was made. There's a scratch on the left side where Brian dragged his bike across it when he was 9. I've always liked that scratch. It's the kind of mark that means a house actually got lived in. I had written a few things down on a notepad beforehand. I don't usually do that, but I wanted to be clear, and I didn't want to get pulled off track or let the conversation drift into something manageable instead of something real. I told them I was glad I could help when they needed it, and I meant every word of that. Then I told them the garage was mine and was not available as an office, now or at any point going forward. But I told them any changes to the house, any purchase that affected how a room looked or functioned, had to come through me first. And I told them I needed an actual move-out date by the end of the month. The original plan was 3 or 4 months, I said. It's been 7. I need a real date on the calendar. Sasha listened with her hands folded on the table. She nodded at the right moments. When I finished, she said, "Of course, Carl. We appreciate everything you've done for us." Very composed. Very polite. Brian looked relieved, like a hard conversation had gone better than he expected. Nothing changed, as the monitors were back on my workbench within a week. There was no apartment search, no dates were discussed. I'd had the clearest conversation I knew how to have, said everything I needed to say, and it had landed like a stone thrown into deep water. A ripple, and then nothing. That was when I understood that being clear once wasn't enough. Clear had to mean something you were actually willing to follow through on, not just something you said at a kitchen table. The first week of November, Sasha told me, not asked me, told me, that she was planning a Christmas gathering. Her sister Cheryl and Cheryl's husband, Phil, a few people from her business network. Low key, she said. December 23rd. That's fine, I said. I'll need to know who's coming so I can plan the food. She tilted her head slightly. Oh, I was going to handle all of that. You don't need to worry about a thing. Sasha, it's my house. And I'm involved in any gathering here. Of course, she said. I just wanted to take the pressure off you. I let it go in that moment. I shouldn't have, but I did. The evening of December 22nd, I came downstairs to find the dining room rearranged. My dining chairs, 8 of them, dark walnut, bought one at a time over 15 years because I liked them, and I wanted them to last, had been pushed aside and supplemented with 6 folding chairs from somewhere I didn't recognize. But the whole table had been shifted to the center of the room. The sideboard, where I keep Linda's mother's china, had been moved against the far wall. On top of it, someone had arranged a row of white pillar candles and a twig and berry display that looked like it came straight out of a catalog. My Christmas centerpiece, the wooden bowl Linda and I picked out together at a craft fair the year we got married, with the pine cones and the small brass reindeer she found at a flea market and painted herself, was sitting on the floor next to the sideboard and on a piece of newspaper, like something set aside to be thrown away. I stood in the doorway of my dining room for a long moment. Then I picked up my centerpiece, placed it back in the center of my table, moved the white candles off to the side of the sideboard where they weren't in the way of anything, and went to make my coffee. Sasha came downstairs at 9:30. She walked into the dining room. She walked back out. She stood in the kitchen doorway. I had that arranged a specific way, she said. I know, I said. And I moved it. The wooden bowl goes on my table at Christmas. It always has. She pressed her lips together and went back upstairs without another word. Brian found me about an hour later. He looked the way he'd been looking for months. Tired, stretched thin, like a man who had been trying to keep a lid on something for so long he'd forgotten what it felt like to just set the thing down. Dad, he started. Brian, I said. I'm not having this conversation. And it's my table, my centerpiece stays. He nodded. He didn't push back. That was something, even if it wasn't enough. The guests arrived at 6 the next evening. Cheryl came in first. I'd met her twice before, pleasant woman, with Phil right behind her. Phil shook my hand warmly and asked how the house was holding up, the way someone asks when they actually want to know. 2 women I hadn't met, colleagues of Sasha's from her business network. Polite, well-dressed, perfectly friendly in that surface way of people at a gathering where they don't know everyone yet. I had been up since 4:30 that morning. The turkey had been smoking since 5. I'd made cornbread from scratch using Linda's recipe, the one with the buttermilk and the cast-iron skillet, the one that makes the whole house smell the way Christmas is supposed to smell. I'd made the cranberry sauce the way my mother taught me, with orange peel and a little bourbon, but sort of same as I've been making it since 1987. I had polished the good glasses. I had set the table with the placemats Linda made one winter and the walnut-handled cutlery we received as a wedding gift. I was still wearing my flannel shirt when Sasha came into the kitchen just before the guests settled in. She looked me over. The flannel shirt, the oven mitts, the sawdust still on my boots from checking the smoker that morning, and something crossed her face, just for a second, that she didn't quite manage to hide in time. Carl, she said. Calm. Even. The way you'd relay a scheduling note to someone at the office. Maybe you'd be more comfortable watching the game in your room tonight. There it was. In my house. The house I bought when I was 33 years old. At the table I had set every Christmas for 31 years, after 13 hours of cooking. She looked at me and suggested, calmly and pleasantly, that I might be more comfortable in my room. I didn't feel the anger you might expect. Not the hot kind that makes you raise your voice or say something you can't take back. What I felt was something colder than that. Clearer. Like a decision had already been made somewhere in the back of my mind, and this was just the moment I found out about it. I took off my oven mitts, set them on the counter, picked up my coffee mug, and I walked outside. Not to my room. To the backyard. I walked straight to the smoker, checked the temperature the way I'd been checking it all day, and started setting up the patio table, cutting board down first, then the turkey. Then I went back inside and brought out the cornbread, the cranberry sauce, the good serving spoons. I did it slowly and without any drama. I didn't slam anything. I didn't make an announcement. Well, I just set up dinner outside the way I'd done 100 times in the summers when Linda was alive, and we'd rather eat on the porch than in the house. Then I started carving. Phil smelled it first. He came through the back door about 3 minutes later, drink in hand, and stopped when he saw the setup. "Carl," he said, "that bird looks unbelievable." "Applewood," I said. "Low and slow since 5 this morning." He pulled up a chair without being asked. Well, that's the kind of man Phil is. He reads a room, or in this case a backyard, and he makes a decision. Cheryl came out next. Then one of Sasha's colleagues leaned through the door and said the smell had been driving her crazy all evening, and could she please come outside? The other one followed right behind her. By the time I'd carved through one side of the turkey, all 5 guests were standing on my back patio in their coats. Someone had grabbed the cornbread basket from inside. Phil had refilled his drink and brought one out for Cheryl without being asked. People were talking, laughing a little, but passing the cranberry sauce around. Sasha's carefully arranged indoor setup sat empty. Dinner happened on my back patio in the December cold, with coats on, and the smoker still putting out a little heat from the side. Phil said it was the best turkey he'd had in years. One of Sasha's colleagues asked for the cranberry sauce recipe, and I told her it had been my mother's, and she said she wasn't surprised. I sat at my own patio table, in my flannel shirt, and I passed things when they came to me, and I answered every question, and I laughed when something was funny. About 40 minutes in, I looked over and saw Sasha had come outside. She'd found a seat next to Cheryl, and she was talking, and her expression was controlled, but her jaw was tight in the way it gets when she is working to keep something in. She didn't say anything to me for the rest of the evening. Neither did I say anything to her. When the guests left, I cleaned up. It's my kitchen. I do my own dishes. I washed everything, dried it, put it away where it belonged. Then I went and sat in the living room. Brian came and sat across from me about 10 minutes later. Sasha stayed in the dining room. I could hear her moving around in there, probably rearranging something. "I didn't know she said that to you," Brian said. He said it quietly, looking at his hands. "I know you didn't," I said. "But I need you to hear something right now, Brian. Not manage it, not smooth it over, actually hear it." He looked up. "This is my house," I said. "I bought it in 1991. I have fixed and rebuilt and maintained every part of it for 34 years. Your mother and I raised you here. I have earned the right to sit at my own table and cook my own Christmas dinner without being told to go to my room." He didn't say anything. "I've been patient," I said. "I've been kind. I meant both of those things, and I'd do it the same way again. But I can't keep doing it when the space I'm making for you is getting filled up with disregard. I can't, and I'm not going to." Brian was quiet for a long time. Outside, a car went past. "We've overstayed," he finally said. "I've known that for a while. I think I kept avoiding it because staying here was easier than dealing with what Sasha and I actually need to deal with." That was the moment I understood something I hadn't let myself see clearly until then. The difficulty wasn't only about my house. There was something going on between Brian and Sasha. Something unresolved that had been sitting between them before they ever moved in. And staying here had given them a way to keep not dealing with it. My house, my routines, my stuff to have opinions about, it had all been something to focus on instead of each other. I couldn't fix that. It wasn't mine to carry. but I could stop letting my home be the place they used to avoid it. I love you, I told him. I need you and Sasha out by February 1st. That's 5 weeks. I'll help you find a place. I'll look at listings with you. I'll cover first and last month if money is still tight. But February 1st is the date, and it doesn't move. He nodded. No argument. And I think somewhere in him, some part of him that hadn't had room to breathe in a long time, he was relieved. They moved out on January 29th, 3 days early. I stood on the front porch in my work coat and watched the moving truck turn the corner at the end of the street. Then I went inside. I went straight to the garage. I put Howard's handplane back on its hook on the wall, exactly where it had always been. I cleared the workbench and set it back up the way it had been for 20 years. Chisels here, drill bits there, handplanes on the second shelf. I opened my dad's old toolbox and spent a good hour going through it, oiling the hinges on the old chisels, checking the handles, putting everything back where it belonged. There's something about that kind of work, slow, deliberate, your hands knowing what to do without your brain having to manage it, that settles things down inside a man. Then, I started on the bookshelf. Linda had wanted a built-in bookshelf in the living room for as long as we'd owned that house. We'd talked about it every winter for years. I'd sketched it out more times than I can count, on the back of grocery lists and napkins and whatever paper was around. Never built it while she was alive because there was always something more urgent. After she died, I couldn't make myself start it. It stayed in the sketches. I started it that January night. Oak and cherry, mortise and tenon joinery, the old way, no shortcuts. The kind of work that takes time to do right. And that was exactly what I needed. Something that couldn't be rushed. Howard came by one Saturday in February. We looked at the pieces laid out on the bench together. He ran his hand along the face frame and said, "That's good stock, Carl." Coming from Howard, that means something. We drank coffee in the garage and talked for about 2 hours, and it was the best Saturday I'd had in longer than I could remember. The bookshelf took me most of February and part of March. But some nights I'd get 2 solid hours of work in. Some nights I'd just stand there looking at the pieces and thinking about what went where. Both kinds of nights were good. When it was finished, it was the best piece of furniture I'd ever made. The joinery was clean. The finish came out right on the first try. I put it in the living room, and it fit the wall like it had always been there. I kept it for about a week. Then I called Brian and told him I had something for him. He and Sasha came over on a Saturday afternoon. Sasha walked in and saw the bookshelf, and she went quiet. Then she said, "Carl, this is beautiful." And she meant it. You can tell the difference. "It's yours," I said. "Your mother always wanted it in this house. Now it goes to yours." Brian looked at me for a second. Then he nodded, and we left it at that. Brian calls me 3 times a week now. Real conversations. Not the checking in kind, but the kind where you actually say something. And he told me last month that he and Sasha have been seeing a counselor together. I told him that takes guts. He said it was going okay. I didn't ask for details. That's their life to live. Sasha texted me in February. Short message. Said she knew things had been hard, and she was sorry for her part in it. I texted back, "Thank you. I mean that." And I did. My sister Paula came out to visit in March. We sat at my kitchen table, the one with the scratch on the left side, drank coffee, ate the lemon cake she always brings, and talked for 4 hours. And at one point, she looked around and said, "It feels like your house again." "It always was," I said. She gave me a look. "You know what I mean." I did. Here's what I want to leave with you. Maybe you're in some version of this right now. Maybe it's a family member who's overstayed. Maybe it's someone making decisions in your space like you don't have a say. Maybe you've just been saying, I'd prefer for so long that people have stopped hearing it as anything but background noise. The moment someone starts crossing the line in your home is almost never a big, dramatic moment. It's always something small, a thing moved without asking, a decision made like you don't exist, a question that never gets asked because it's easier not to. And if you let enough of those small things pass without saying anything clear, the accumulation gets heavy in a way that's hard to name and hard to undo. You are allowed to say no. What you are allowed to say, this is my house, and that is not up for discussion. You can say it without raising your voice. You can say it without making it a war. But you have to say it like you mean it, not as a preference, not as a wish, but as a fact. The people who genuinely respect you will hear a clear line. The ones who won't. That tells you something, too. I built this house with my own hands. I raised my son in it. And I lost my wife in it and kept living here because it is the shape of my life, and I am not done living that life yet. Nobody gets to tell me to go watch TV in my room, and neither does anyone get to tell you. Your home isn't just four walls and a roof. It's every decision you ever made, every sacrifice you ever kept quiet about, and every morning you got up and kept going. Don't let anyone make you a guest in the middle of all that. The hardest thing isn't standing your ground. It's realizing you should have done it 10 small moments earlier, before the silence became the loudest thing in the room.